Today's guest is a big part of the Minotauros front office. Joining me now, it is Ken Oda. He's the Director of Operations for the Minot Minotauros. There's a couple stops between now and then that I wanted to get your take on here for a little bit. Ken, thanks for coming on.
Sure.
First,
happy to be here.
Yeah, for sure, man. So I know one of your early stops just a little bit, being a Big East basketball fan. What was it like going to DePaul? And I know you're a hockey guy nowadays, but did you ever kind of get hardcore into those rivalries? Because I'm a Villanova fan, man.
You know, I'll be honest, DePaul wasn't very good when I was there in the mid-2000s. I think there was one year they made the NIT, but I think other than that one season, they had, I think, two years while I was there that they didn't win a single game in the Big East. So it was hard to get into their basketball games, I'll tell you. And especially, they have a beautiful new building downtown now, but when I was there, they were playing out in the suburbs, and campus is right in downtown, basically. So didn't really ever go to a DePaul game out in the suburbs. They played, I think, 2 games on campus I went to. They were fun, but as bad as that team was while I was there and as far away, they were playing, like I said, an hour from campus. Never went to a game while I was a student. Been to a few games before and after I was a student, but when I was living down on campus, never made it out to the suburbs to go to a game.
That's the one thing about Big East basketball. Like, when they're flying under the radar and getting better, it's, like, really fun to see because it has an old school feel. But it's a conference where, like, nationally you can get, like, forgotten if you're not, like, awesome. I mean, like, Georgetown's been kind of out of it for a while, like, just as an example, even though they have a long-term pedigree, you know. So,
well, and DePaul was good in the 80s when I was very little. But really, by the time I got there, the program was a bit of a mess, and hopefully it starts getting better now. The new AD there taking over, I think just this summer. Hopefully they'll start to focus on basketball a little more. The athletics, no football there, but the athletics, like a lot of the women's sports, basketball, softball, did really well. The soccer program was doing well, but college sports, the 2 big ones are football and basketball, right? The basketball program, unfortunately, for probably the last 20 years, has been a bit of an afterthought.
Yeah. So once you get out of there, what you do with the Tauros, you do pretty much a little bit of everything when somebody could even imagine when it comes to running a sports franchise, whether it's within like media presentation, marketing, and sales for the club. But throughout like those different skills, your other stops were with the Chicago Blaze and Bravo Sierra Productions Company. How did those stops kind of help your experience today and made you a better, worker with the Tauros? How's that experience helped you?
Well, they were huge. I mean, really, a little about my background. I was not intending to work in sports when I was an undergrad. I was fully intending to go to law school. I got into Northwestern Law back home in Chicago, was planning to be a lawyer, and it's the dumbest story possible, but I'm 10 years older than my baby sister. She was in a high school marching band, and they had the 4th of July parade. There was the Chicago Blaze, were a minor league single-A pro team that was starting in Chicago, and they were going to be starting that fall. They were walking in the parade, and they were handing out these postcards that they were hiring for everything. As a little kid, my dream was to be a broadcaster, and they were hiring for the broadcaster job. Some friends and family convinced me I should try out before I started law school to see if I could get the job. And, I interviewed. They asked me if I knew how broadcasting equipment works, and I lied and said I did.
Yeah, for sure.
They offered me a chance to audition against some guys who just graduated from school and wanting to broadcast, and I went and did the audition, and next thing I know, they're offering me a job, making next to no money. I think I was making $18,000 a year that first year out of college. So I dropped out of law school and went and did that. And they gave me the freedom really to try and figure it out and make it work on my own. And it's funny. Like I said, I dropped out of school to do that. And the team started in August with training camp, and literally the weekend before Thanksgiving, the team folded.
Damn.
So I had dropped out of school, and now I found myself unemployed. Fortunately, I made that connection with Bravo Sierra. They had been the company that was broadcasting the games on Chicago radio. And since the team had already had the radio contract, bought the airtime, they basically came to me and said, look, we've got this airtime booked. Do you want it? And I said, well, I didn't have any other plans. I couldn't get back into law school in the middle of the semester. So yeah, I'll take the airtime. And I went and I just started selling ads and hosting a Chicago sports talk show, basically, on Fridays and Saturday nights. And from there, it taught me the business side, the sales side, which is something that helped me out here, obviously. That was one of my first roles and the role I continue in. And it also, through that show, I was able to get press passes to go down to, Wrigley Field or U.S. Cellular, guaranteed rate, whatever the White Sox are calling it now, and the United Center, and get into these pro locker rooms around. I was working sitting right next to the ESPN broadcasters and stuff, and getting to learn how the true pros do their job and how professional teams run their media operation. And that's like those two lessons, or those two opportunities taught me a lot of lessons, and really are the core of how I try to do things here.
So you were ready to go into law school. I'm curious, were you worried at all about diving into that school commitment? Because, on the other side, you were willing to just lie about knowing anything about broadcast stuff in order to do that,
Well, I wasn't worried about law school at all. I was worried about telling my parents I wasn't going to go to law school.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But, my parents, they were super supportive about it. It helps that my dad is a small business. He's a contractor. He works for himself. So there was always that fallback, especially in those early years when I was, struggling to pay rent. I could always just call my dad and say, Dad, I need to come work for you a few days and put some extra cash in my pocket, and so having that safety net, it made it a situation where I was able to really, like I said, it's a silly little dream that I'm just going to watch for the rest of my life. But having that safety net of my dad allowed me to at least work for him to make the extra money to make, when you're starting this business and starting the way I did, making next to no money, your landlord doesn't care, the electric company doesn't care. So I had that, they don't care that you're chasing your dream. So I had that fallback of being able to just call my dad and go spend a few days working, helping build houses, and then I'd be able to pay my bills again.
I'm asking you, Ken, about all these life experiences, and you've had this step-by-step to get out to Minot. And looking back, it kind of makes sense. But in the moment, when you're telling me, boy, I'm worried about maybe, hitting my rent, was there any kind of, rough patches to this process for you?
Well, without a doubt. I finished undergrad then, and I think we talked about it, that summer, I was supposed to go start law school in the fall, and I'll be honest, I'd struggled with some depression. I'd gone through some stuff in my personal life. I'm not going to bore your listeners with all the problems of a 21-year-old Ken, but I went through a lot of things, some family stuff, some personal stuff that I struggled with depression quite a bit, and I knew that summer I didn't really want to go to law school. I didn't want to become a lawyer anymore. That wasn't the dream anymore. But I didn't particularly have a direction yet of where I wanted to go. The only thing that really made me happy that summer was listening to Cubs games on the radio or watching them on TV if I wasn't working. And, to me, the broadcast crews really, I have amazing friends back home in Chicago, but when you're dealing with that kind of stuff, I didn't feel like I had friends. I felt very alone. And it's silly looking back now knowing that I had so many people back home who cared about me and loved me, but it doesn't feel that way when you're battling depression. And it got to a point where for a time it felt like the only escape I had, the only maybe friends I had were the broadcast crews, and having those those guys, you listen to any broadcast for long enough, there's the inside jokes and the stuff like that they have with their listeners. And for me, that really, that kind of drives what I do now is I try to, my broadcast is a little less serious, a little more towards the fun. I try to connect with the listeners. I encourage people to tweet me, email me all throughout the broadcast, interact with me during the broadcast, let me know what's going on. We've announced births on the air. We've announced weddings on the air. We did a wedding at Center Ice during a game that I officiated over. And it's that connection, I think, that drew me to the profession, and it's what I try to do now when I'm broadcasting.
Yeah, so, I mean, I can just imagine, like, the career uncertainty. I mean, it hits anybody because, I mean, even if you're set up going to DePaul and stuff, you always just want to be able to, make it that name for yourself. And when you don't follow, like, the storyline of getting out of college and getting right into where you want to be, it can be tough.
Certainly, and it's not a unique story. I'm not the only kid to go to school for, undergrad and get out of undergrad and go, okay, well, I just spent 4 or 5 years studying something, and now I don't want to do that. But like I said, I had some things going on in my personal life, some other things going on that really weighed on me, and it was definitely a struggle. But a lot of times you hear hockey players or other athletes talk about how the game gave them everything, and really, I feel the same way. Like I grew up a huge sports fan. A lot of boys, a lot of my time with my dad was spent, around sports and, playing sports growing up. I wasn't nearly the caliber athlete that we have here playing for the Tauros. I couldn't play on any kind of level like that. But, I grew up around the game, and now most of my adult life, it's how I've made my living. And, I honestly believe, if it weren't for finding the career I did, I don't know what would have happened with my struggles with depression and, being able to have the game. And it's what's made this last, 9 months of COVID so difficult is, it's really become a coping tool for me, something that helps me deal with my depression.
Yeah, because this was an era where a lot of stuff could lead to depression in this year, and there wasn't a sports outlet for people. If that helps people, and you had that.
Yeah, and that's for us who work in sports just like you, the uncertainty. It's one thing to not have had games over the summer, until baseball started. It's one thing to not be able to turn on your TV and watch a game for a few months. It's a totally different thing, right? When your livelihood depends on those games being played. Like I know it had to have been a struggle for you for a long time when there weren't sports going on. What do you cover every day? How do you justify your employer keeping you around, right? Mm-hmm. So, it's the same thing here with us of, okay, well, how long is this going to last? How are we going to be able to play games? Are we going to be able to survive? And just that constant struggle has without a doubt been difficult. But like I said, I owe my life to this game, and as long as there's a chance, we're going to be here fighting to make sure that we play and survive.
That's awesome, man. Well, before we get into your Tauros beginnings, you did mention something that I think might have some bright spots through there. Talk about why you wanted to pick up and, I don't know, get certified, ordained, or whatever to officiate weddings, and tell me the best parts of that have come out of it.
Honestly, it's one of my best friends back home, Lauren. I still call her Cooney because that was her maiden name, but Lauren Parati and Tom, her husband. Lauren and I were great friends, and she always joked that she was going to ask me to be one of her bridesmaids. Well, realistically, that's not going to happen. So her and Tom asked me if I would officiate their wedding for them. And, guys who work in our profession, if you want to give me an hour with a microphone in my hand, I'm not going to turn it down, right?
Right, yeah.
I officiated their wedding, and then came back to Minot, and another couple had asked me to do their wedding, and then actually one of our bartenders, Brandy, She was getting married. They asked me, they're like, we don't want to do a big ceremony. We don't want to do anything. We need someone who can legally sign a marriage license and say they officiated our wedding. So I said, well, yeah, but I have an idea. What if we did it at center ice during the first intermission of a game? And honestly, it's one of my favorite memories of my time here so far working in Minot. We did the, intermission rolls around, and I run down to the ice, and we get them out, and she came in through the player entrance, and we do the quick wedding, just quick vows, and then they had their first dance right at center ice, and all the lights were out. We had a spotlight on them. Fans turned on the flashlights on their cell phones. They were waving their phones. It was a corny, but it was like a scene out of a movie. It was one of my, aside from the hockey part of my job, one of my favorite memories of working for the Tauros.
That's awesome, man. Were they on skates during the whole thing because she was coming out of the players' entrance, or what?
No, it was all good. It was, we had just her and her husband. Her husband was waiting at center ice. She walked out. We had spotlights on her the whole way. But no skates or anything. Just in shoes.
Because the Tauros always have to look out for liability, right?
Oh yeah. I think they're the only time we haven't required the intermission participants to not wear a helmet. I think that probably would have ruined some of the pictures if they had been out there with hockey helmets on.
Yeah, because then they're definitely like real hockey nerds or whatever. Okay,
would have made the first kiss interesting.
Yeah. All right. So back to the beginning here. So how do you find the Tauros gig?
Well, after Bravo Sierra, actually, there was another North American Hockey League team that was in Chicago, and they were coached by the former coach of the Blaze. He felt like he owed me for the way things ended with the Blaze, where the team just folded, and he knew that I had dropped out of law school, so he felt like he owed me an opportunity. So as soon as he got the coaching job with the new NA team in Chicago, he called me and said, look, this is an opportunity. We need a media guy. Will you come work for us? So I worked for them for 2 years. But I love the North American Hockey League, but it doesn't work in major markets. At the time, the Central Division was Chicago, St. Louis, Detroit. All of those teams have folded. It's just a league that plays on Fridays and Saturdays can't compete in a major city with everything else there is to do in those big cities on a weekend. So after that team folded, after the Chicago Hitmen folded, I found myself looking for another job, and I decided I would just pretty much go through all the websites of North American Hockey League teams and find teams that didn't have a guy. And I knew after 2 more years of doing play-by-play that I enjoyed play-by-play so much more than I enjoyed doing sports talk on radio. So I knew that was the direction I wanted to go. I talked to 3 or 4 teams in the North American Hockey League, and it came down to 2 offers. And honestly, it was Marty Murray and Brad Porter, who were here at the time. Well, Brad's still here. Marty's, of course, moved on this summer. But it was really just my conversations with them and the confidence I had in the 2 of them that made me want to come here instead of go to a couple of the other places that I could have gone.
How did the moment where you got the full-time job with the Tauros, how did that make you feel, man? Because, I was coming up, and I think something similar to you a little bit, where I was working in D.C., a bunch of part-time stuff, where I was also waiting tables. You were also helping your dad while being able to enjoy Chicago, Yeah. But to have your name on the full-time sports gig, what was that like for you?
Oh, it validated the decisions I had made, right? Like, for that first, 4 years after I made the decision that I wasn't going to go to law school and I was going to chase it, a lot of friends and family are like, it's not too late to go back to law school. It's not too late to go back to law school. I'm sure if you reapply, you'll get back in. Or, Northwestern's a top 10 law school. They're like, you can apply to a lower level law school and get in. And, for 4 years, that's living at home. That's what I dealt with, right? Was everyone trying to say, politely, but still tell me you made a mistake. Look, you're working for your dad. You don't want to spend the rest of your life working for your dad. And so getting that full-time job and being able to pay my own bills and make that next step and start building a career as opposed to, working for my dad and having broadcasting be a side job, it really, like you said, it validated it and it made it, this is real. I'm good at this. I can do this. And now here we are. I've been in Minot since 2012, so 8 years, going into my ninth season with the Tauros, and it really, I've done it. Whether or not I advance any farther, I've at least proved that I can make a living and a career out of working in sports.
And I mean, it was still like an uncertain couple of years for you, but it kind of shows how much you really want to do it, that you didn't make the turn that people were kind of referring about, Yeah, exactly. I had always had faith in myself, and my parents were incredibly supportive. I can't thank them enough. But my dad, my parents spent a lot of money. I'm a private school brat. My parents spent a lot of money on my education, specifically because my dad always just told me, I don't want to see you just here working with me doing manual labor the rest of your life. And, I by no means am I criticizing that type of work, but, my dad wanted me to be able to chase my dreams, whatever they were, and to have now been able to do that based on, my parents supporting me, all my life. It feels good, and it feels like I've returned that investment to them. So that's
how I'm not paying them back my tuition money.
Yeah, big time. So that's how you get like your break into doing this sports industry stuff. Now that you're in it, how do you think that you improve as a broadcaster as time goes on? Not even like you personally, but in general, how does one do that?
The big thing is going back or listening to your games has been huge. I pretty much rewatch every game I've done, and now like 2 years in Chicago, 9 seasons here, 60 games a year, however many games that is. I've done a lot of games, and a lot of it's going back and watching and seeing, okay, where could I have been better? And some of it's listening to your fans. It's become this kind of joke in the North American Broadcasting League community that there's a lot of times if you listen to me do a game, I'll say, there's 960 seconds left in the period. And that's kind of meaningless, right? I did it once as a joke, and our fans went crazy about it. All of a sudden, for the next month, every time I would say how much time was left in the period, someone on Twitter would message, how many seconds is that? And it just became this running joke, and now I do it maybe 2 or 3 times a period where I guess I'm just good at math. I can look at the clock and figure out how many seconds are left pretty quickly. And, so now 2 or 3 times a period, some of the job is just fan service, right? So finding out what the fans enjoy about your broadcast and doing that, finding out, okay, I might think this is a really cool or funny way to describe things. And if fans go, okay, that was stupid, then I'm not going to do it again. So I think it's a combination, making it, going and reviewing the tape just like the players do. Where could I be better? And then listening to the fans, because in the end, it's the fans who your job is to entertain them.
Yeah, I remember. I don't know if your mic would pick this up enough, but whenever I would go to Capitals games, they always say on the PA, like 1 minute remaining, there would always be those fans in the 300 section that would yell out, like, how much time's left? And then instantly the guy would be like, 1 minute remaining. That was always like the running goofy time joke back home anyway. So
exactly, and that's what it's. A lot of the broadcast is about serving the fans' needs, right? Like, I look at myself when I'm on the air. Yes, the team pays my check, but in the end, the relationship I have as a broadcaster is with the fans, not with the team. You've got to be honest. If our goalie's having a bad game, I'm going to talk about our goalie's having a bad game. Mm-hmm. And I think that's key. You have to have that honesty with the fan base.
Yeah, I mean, I see 30 teams a season, man. I can definitely tell where you're coming from with that, and so they all follow their teams and whatnot too. Was it always hockey or bust for you? Would you work in sports if it wasn't hockey? I've
thought about it, and I don't. growing up, baseball has always been my favorite sport. I'm a huge baseball fan. I will sit here. I will have no problem admitting that I cried when the Cubs won the World Series. So
nice.
Baseball was always my passion growing up. I was a hockey fan too. I grew up going to Blackhawks games. I'm still a Chicago Blackhawks season ticket holder. I love hockey as well, but baseball was it for me. And part of why I work in hockey is because it is my second favorite sport. I don't want baseball to become work. I've never wanted baseball to become work. I've helped out a couple times with the Sabre Dogs when they needed help with a PA guy, but for the most part, I have no interest in baseball becoming work. And even though I've worked in hockey now for a decade plus, it hasn't killed my love for hockey at all. I still go home, and if the Blackhawks are playing tonight, I'm throwing that game on too, or stuff like that. So I've thought about working in other sports, but really, I enjoy hockey so much. And as a broadcaster, it is the easiest broadcast. I'll be honest. I've filled in and done a baseball game a couple of times. I've done a couple of football games. Hockey's just the easiest broadcast. You just say what you see. There's hardly any downtime. Baseball is just a nightmare to broadcast with, all right, there's a pitch, and then the pitcher goes on a 2-mile walk around the mound, and then he gets ready to pitch, and the batter steps out to adjust his Velcro on his batting gloves. It's just a nightmare to broadcast baseball. As much as I love to sit at Wrigley Field and eat peanuts and watch the Cubs, it's fun as a fan. As a broadcaster, I don't know how guys do it 162 games.
You have to have, like, so many stories, like, in the chamber. And it has to be tough, like, when you're new and pretty much all you can do is, like, look up way too many stats, I guess, when you don't have, like, hanging out at the ballpark for your entire life stories to come back on it. And it's interesting because I think a lot of people would think, like, hockey's super fast and that makes it harder. But do you think it's easy?
Oh, yeah. I mean, sure, when the play is moving quickly, that's the challenge. But for me as a broadcaster, the hardest time to fill in is, okay, here's a long delay, right? No, here's no action. At least if play is going so quickly that I don't have time to get to the couple of stories I've got lined up or the interesting stats I've got lined up, if nothing else, I can always just fall back on, I say, just say what you see, right? Like that's, if I get any young play-by-play guy broadcaster some advice, when in doubt, just start saying what you see, And in hockey, it has the least downtime, so it gives you the most time to say what you're seeing. And for me, that's what makes hockey so easy to do. There are times where all of a sudden there's 3 quick passes, and every guy has a 10-syllable last name. You get tripped up a little bit. That's going to happen to any broadcaster, but those times are still, I think, easier than having to fill that 2-minute delay between pitches, or there's a mound visit and the manager's talking to the pitcher, they're talking strategy, and you can't hear the conversation. And especially at the low levels of broadcasting, when you don't have someone sitting next to you, you don't have that color guy, you don't have that second voice that you could bounce back and forth with. How do you fill those long gaps, right? That's always the challenge. And hockey has the least of them, and that's why I think hockey, at least for me, is the easiest to call.
Let's talk about what the Tauros are typically up against, and that's the Central Division. Whether you're broadcasting it, the guys are working out to get ready to play, they're game planning, or any kind of front office responsibilities. How does the team keep a fresh message to, keep putting the work in to have a good end product when you guys are playing the same, 4 teams over and over for months?
Yeah, it has its benefits in that, historically we've seen, on the rare chance that we do bring someone from out of the division in, on a business standpoint, like if we play a team that's not in our division and our fans don't know who they are, we typically see a drop in attendance, right? Mm-hmm. So it has some benefits there. Our fans want those storylines. Our fans want to come in and cheer against the Aberdeen Wings because our fans hate the Aberdeen Wings. Same with the Bismarck Bobcats, right? Everyone in Minot wants to watch us beat Bismarck. So it has its benefits on the business side. As a broadcaster, as someone who's, on the inside, it does get kind of old sometimes. You'd like to see some new teams. You hate we've got a stretch coming up where I think we pretty much exclusively play Bismarck and Aberdeen for like 5 weeks in a row, and it does wear on you a little bit. But at the same time, as a broadcaster, as a storyteller, it actually makes the job a little bit easier because you know those storylines with the other teams. You know what's going on. One of the things I love about the Central Division is we have, there's 6 teams and there's 6 very good media guys. And we all, we've got a group text. We're texting all the time. We're sharing information. Not stuff coaches wouldn't want shared, but just stuff like, tips on, hey, this is what's going on with our team, or, we'll share our notes with each other because I don't have time to follow all 6 teams in the division. I might not realize that they've got a guy who's on a 3-game point streak or something like that. So having that professional level media team in the division has certainly made it better.
On the other side, what is like the team's most creative promotion that they're going to run when they host Kenai River and not Aberdeen?
We go back and forth. Right now, it's kind of hard with COVID to plan. We at any moment we're worried. They might come down and say, okay, you can only have unfortunately for the college teams, they're told this weekend they can only have 50 fans. So we're kind of walking a delicate line right now. And, we've talked about doing promotions. We love our teddy bear toss in December. And we'll do our ag appreciation weekend in January, like we do every year, when the farmers have some downtime. We'll do our superhero weekend like we did last weekend, where we asked people to nominate and we honored local heroes. I'm sure this year that will certainly turn towards healthcare workers quite a bit. So, we're still doing those types of promotions to try and get fans through the door, but it's also, we've talked about the responsibility of, do we really want to put 2,000 people in this building right now? Is that safe? And so we've scaled back a little bit. We're going to keep playing games. We're not putting a limit on, but we're also not pushing to fill the building because we don't want it to become a dangerous environment for our fans either.
Yeah, and so you guys obviously have to keep watching that. This is going to be up like right after Thanksgiving, and we're like in mid-November right now. So everybody just watch, and if Ken has to change something, just understand Ken's saying this today. But obviously, any business venture wants to make money. You have like employee honors within a company. You have Reader's Choice Awards, like industry standard awards that come down. But what is it about just winning one championship what does that mean for you guys in a workplace? How does that motivate you?
Oh, the games are what take this job and make it, as opposed to any other office job, it's the games that really change this industry, right? So, you look at, we can have just a rough week in the office, especially right now with COVID. There are sponsors who have come to us and just said, hey, look, our business is hurting, so we're hurting right now. And, all that stuff where sponsors might be slashing budgets and all the other stuff that we're dealing with as far as we already discussed. Do we try to fill the building? Do we not? All the, potential trying to keep the players safe, everything that's going on. It's certainly a high-stress job at times, but, you get those games and you get that enjoyment, and just even a regular season win is like a deep breath, right? Everyone, you feel that happiness for a bit. And, looking back to 2018 when we won the Central Cup and had that deep run, made it all the way to the league championship game, ultimately fell short, but just like, I look back on that season still, and the joy in some of those wins is really what, like I said, what makes this job different. It's what makes it a job that's fun to do. I mean, do I enjoy when I have to sit and prep all of the financial numbers from each game to give to our accountant for our taxes? No, that's not any more fun working in sports than it would be working in a different industry. But getting those games and getting the wins and ultimately, hopefully, hoisting a Robertson Cup and hanging a banner up in this building would be, that's what makes it different. That's what makes the job fun and makes it enjoyable.
What was it about 2018 that got you guys so close to that goal?
I don't mean to make fun of any of our players. That's not the way I'm saying it, but that was just a group that was too dumb to know any better. They're smart kids, but
no pressure. Yeah.
They were. In February, we were in last place, and Marty was sitting there and he'd get so mad at the guys, and they were just looking like, why are you so mad? Yeah, we lost tonight, but we'll be fine. And you're sitting there, as one of the guys who's not one of the players, our whole staff was sitting there, the guys felt no pressure, no stress, and all of a sudden, I think, in that stretch to end the regular season between February and April, we had 4 games where we were losing in the final minute of regulation and won. 2 of those wins we won in regulation. Like, just the group at no point were they ever like, oh yeah, we have no chance, we're down and out. They look at last place in February and we'll be fine. Losing a game with 30 seconds left, and then they win it in regulation. And then that continued through the playoffs. We sweep Aberdeen in the first round, or we go to 5 with Aberdeen in the first round. I'm sorry, and we're going into Aberdeen, which has been it's so hard to win in that building. Decisive game 5 of the series. We go in there and we win. Then we were the 16th team in the seeding for the playoffs. We go to Austin the next series, and we win games 1 and 2 on the road. Come back here, win game 3 in double overtime. And then we go to the Robertson Cup, and Fairbanks is our third round opponent. They had a 36-game win streak in the middle of the regular season. And there we are. We didn't even win 36 games all year. And they're our next matchup. And everyone at that tournament, these guys they're going to get swept out of here by Fairbanks. No one looked at us like we belonged because, again, we were the last team to clinch a playoff spot. And those guys, no fear, too stupid to know any better. They think, we'll just go out there and we'll win. And sure enough, it's a best-of-3 series. We lose game 1. Still, guys are confident. Come back, win game 2. And then game 3 of that series was perhaps the wildest hockey game I've ever seen. 4 lead changes in the final 6 minutes or something like that. And we tie it with, again, less than a minute left, and then win it in overtime to go to the final game. And, the team did run out of gas. We lose 2-1 in that final game, but still, that team was so much fun. And what made it fun was, again, at no point did they ever feel like they were going to lose. Just supreme confidence. Didn't matter if they were down. Didn't matter if they're in last place with 2 months to play in the regular season. That team just don't tell us the odds. Just pat us on the back after we win, and it was just such a fun team to be a part of.
Do you think it would have been harder to make a deep playoff run? Say if you didn't have divisional playoffs first. Say like you were gonna beat Fairbanks no matter what. Okay, so but if it was a 1 versus 16 opening round contest, do you think the rest of the story might have been any different, or were you kind of just riding the wave that year?
There was something to riding the wave, but I also think, I guess it would depend on the format. If we had to fly up to Alaska and play them in their building, probably a different story. I'll be honest. That they have one of the best home ice advantages in the league. They pack their building, and they've got this group of fans who sit behind the visiting bench. They wear hockey gloves, and literally they just punch the glass for 60 minutes. It is an unreal atmosphere up there. And also they have the home ice advantage of you fly up there, and all of a sudden you're on Alaska time, which is, I think, 3 or 4 hours earlier. So when they're dropping the puck at 7 o'clock, to you it feels like you're playing a game at 11 o'clock at night, right? Mm-hmm. So they've got an unreal home ice advantage. And if we had to go up there and play them in the first round in a 1 versus 16, would we have won? I don't know. That team, I don't think, if there was a team that could have done it, it would have been that team. But it's a totally different story trying to play Alaska in Alaska.
let's go from one atmosphere to the Madhouse on Madison. You mentioned you were a season ticket holder for the Blackhawks, still are. I mean, you can't always get back there for it, so how has ticket resale been going for you as the team has kind of been awesome, and now they've kind of fluctuated back down a little bit?
I think this was the first year that I didn't turn a profit on my season tickets. I split them. My college buddies and I got them. DePaul is just a few L stops from the United Center. So my buddies and I got them in college. We used to go even before Kane and Tays were around. That's how long ago I was in college. We used to go. They used to do these $5 student tickets. You just had to show a student ID at the door, and you could buy a ticket for $5. Because before Kane and Tays, they never sold out. There were 5,000 people in the building, right?
Right.
So for my whole college experience, we were going and buying $5 tickets every game. And then Kane and Tays' rookie year rolls around, and all of a sudden they start selling out. So my buddies and I are like, hey, it was our senior year of college. We're like, let's just see how much season tickets cost. And they were cheap. They were $12 a game, right? So, yeah, forget it. $12 a game, we'll buy season tickets for the rest of the year. And we've had them since. And, when I was living in Chicago, as long as I didn't have a game to work myself, I would go, and my buddies and I would go. And now that I'm out here and they're all, everyone's getting on with their lives, we kind of pool them, and they go to some of the games and we sell the rest. And I think, like I said, this is the first year that we didn't turn a profit. I think we still broke even, but it's pretty hard to sell some of those. You still sell the rivalry games, Detroit, Vancouver, St. Louis, but a little bit harder to maybe unload that Blackhawks, Florida Panthers tickets in the middle of February.
That was going to be my very first example for selling a ticket and having a tough time with it.
Although with Quinville there now might be a ticket that we can get rid of, but some of those other Eastern Conference teams that aren't very competitive, it makes it a little bit harder to unload some of those games.
Blackhawks, Senators.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. This is a sore subject for me, not for you. How lucky are you to have Patrick Kane on the team?
Kane's always been fun to watch. My two favorite Blackhawks of the Cup era were Marian Hossa and Patrick Sharp, but Patrick Kane is just an unreal athlete, and what he does. I remember just going his rookie year and watching him, and after having watched the dark ages of the Blackhawks, when they're bringing in 38-year-old Doug Gilmour and all these big names that are well past their prime, just seeing someone come in and be that good, that young, it's been fun to watch. And he and Jonathan Tays, that team had no business being even competitive the last couple of years and being on the doorstep of the playoffs, let alone getting in with the weird COVID tournament this year. But the only reason those teams have been even on the outside of the playoff conversation is how good those two are.
Yeah, it must be nice to win a draft lottery.
Yeah.
For sure. You already said you cried for the Cubs, and you have a couple of moments that you can tell me about here. Where were you when you've seen the Blackhawks win the Cup and then the Cubs win the World Series?
For the Hawks Cups, the first one when they were in Philly, I was actually at the ESPN Zone restaurant. It was when my friend worked there, and he was in charge of running all the TVs. My friend George. So I was hanging out with him, and so I was watching that game on I think it was a 20-foot screen, and went nuts there. The 2013 Cup was right after I had moved to Minot. That was the first season I was in Minot, and I had gone home and watched Game 5. I went home for games. Our season was over here, so I had gone home, took a couple weeks back in Chicago, was home for games, 1, 2, and 5 were in Chicago. Game 6 was in Boston, and the Hawks were losing that one with less than 5 minutes to play, and I was agonizing over whether or not I was going to go all the way back home for Game 7 or not. And then the Hawks came back and won, so it was nice to not have to worry about spending that kind of money on a last-minute flight. Mm-hmm. And then, let's see, the 2015 Cup, I was in the building. That was a Game 6 winner over Tampa. Dan, my friend Danny, he and I are the guys who have the season tickets from college. He and I went to that game together and just went nuts in the building. And then for the 2016 World Series for the Cubs, I was here in Minot. It's actually one of my favorite moments that I wasn't with my dad, but I shared it with my dad. I watched that game. I could not watch that game in public. I watched Game 7 at home, alone, on my couch, on the phone with my dad for the whole game, pretty much. And it's funny, Chicago TV was about 10 to 15 seconds ahead of Minot cable. So I got to hear my dad tell me the Cubs won the World Series. And now that's honestly one of my favorite, if not my favorite sports moment. Not just because the Cubs won the World Series, but because it was my dad telling me that the Cubs won the World Series.
What about when Chapman left them tie the game?
What was that? Sorry, you broke up there a second.
What about when Aroldis Chapman let the Indians tie the game up?
The whole night was just a roller coaster from Dexter Fowler's leadoff home run, Ross hitting a home run in his final Major League at bat in a Game 7 of the World Series, to the Cubs blowing it in the ninth, and then the rain delay and all of it. That whole night, even now, 4 years later, I'm getting choked up just thinking about that game and what it was like to spend the night just sitting on my couch talking to my dad for 4.5 hours, and it ending with the Cubs winning the World Series. And it was my mom's birthday. She's a huge Cubs fan too. She was on the phone with us, and just all of us there watching the Cubs win it all together just was unbelievable.
Oh man, that's awesome, dude. So what about when you guys in Minot are able to have that moment? What do you think it's going to be like? You have the play-by-play call written already, and you're just waiting to say it, or are you going to be spontaneous?
No, I don't have a call yet. I had one written for that game back in 2018. That year the storyline was easy, right? My plan was to say something along the lines of, the last team in is the last team standing. The Tauros are your 2018 Robertson Cup champs, right? Mm-hmm. That was an easy storyline. We were the 16th and final team to clinch a playoff spot, and we were the second to last team left, right? So that was an easy one. I think really I won't be able to write that line until we see the story unfold. I wrote that line, the night before the game. I'm sure if we get that far again here in the near future, I will be sitting there the night before in the hotel figuring out what I'm going to say. But I think for it to have meaning, it has to be somehow tied to the storyline of the season. And I won't know that until we're sitting in a hotel in Blaine, Minnesota, hopefully next spring.
That's funny because the storyline of the 2018 Tauros would have been the same thing for the 2010 Flyers if they would have been able to get it done. Yeah. But I'm just digressing, man. Congratulations on all the winning.
Yeah, it's been, I've been spoiled as a Chicago sports fan. I grew up, getting to watch the 90s, the Jordan Bulls, and then, the first decade of the 2000s was a little rough, but then getting, the Kane and Tays Blackhawks and the Cubs winning a World Series, and, the Bears haven't won it all, but they did get to a Super Bowl, and they still haven't figured out how to play offense since Walter Payton retired, but they've had some pretty darn good defenses in my lifetime.
Yeah, and it was really fun to see, the Beavers when they had their trophy ceremony at Mesa Arena, and hope for you guys to be able to have that experience real soon, Ken.
Yeah, that's the goal, and that's, the Robertson Cup is great. The Central Cup meant a lot, and honestly, I believe our division is the best in the league, top to bottom. Even though St. Cloud has had their struggles, they're still not, if you put St. Cloud in a different division, I think the record would be a little bit different too. Mm-hmm. So winning Central Cups is huge, but in the end, what everyone here in this organization wants to see is to bring a Robby back home, be a national champion.
All right, well, we'll see you when it happens. Ken, really appreciate you taking the time here today. Thanks a lot with sharing all your experience, man.
No problem. Enjoyed having it.